Hello, my name's Rob and welcome to Swift Slots. So in my video Gulf Madness, I made a throwaway joke about a wheelbarrow in Gulf livery and how I would buy one if they were available. And then I got to thinking. So what I've done is I've taken photographs of my wheelbarrow, worked out the scale, and from that I've taken some very basic measurements, and from those basic measurements I've done a scale drawing of what I intend to make. And then from these measurements, photographs and so on, I've created a template, and from that template I've created a small paper master just to make sure that I'm in the right ballpark. And what I intend to do now is what I've done in fact is take this template that was left and copied it through onto a piece of 0.5 nickel silver, so that's 20 thousandths nickel silver. And what I'll do now is cut this out with a Dremel and fold it up, solder it together, and then solder a rim all the way around the edge of the bucket. Bucket made. Just a quick finish off with some Scotch-Brite pad. there's one bucket, there's one frame with the straps on, which goes on there like that, and two handles on there and on there. And there we have the beginnings of what looks suspiciously like a wheelbarrow. So that is most of the center part of the front wheel done. So there's a Allen key M2.5 going all the way up through here and deep into this shaft as well, locked off nice and tight. Then following up the same hole is this guide pin, and that's locked off by this M2.5 grub screw here. And then the whole thing will be soldered into position on the bottom of the wheelbarrow here, and it'll form like that. There'll be a flag then on the bottom of this guide pin that runs inside the groove, and there'll be a hole up through this wheel here, so the wires will come from the flag through the wheel and out through the back of the wheel into the bucket, just where the wheel is closest to the bucket. And then there'll be the motor in here, so it'll come straight through the bucket into the motor. That's how it'll get its power. And on the outside of this center wheel there'll be the actual rotating wheels with a very fine black rubber band O-ring on either side, so it won't sound horrible, and that will give you the actual rotating part of the wheel. This centerpiece will not rotate, it'll just hold the guide pin. I've threaded the wire through the wheel. The hole actually comes down straight, and then I've turned it to come out the back so that the wire has a straighter access out the hole. So the way this works now is you have your flag here, insulated panels on the side. The braid will sit on the top of this pad, be very gently soldered across the front edge with a wire. It'll come across the top of the pad, around the bottom of the pad, and then straight out the bottom. And then that braid can have a certain amount of flex in it so that it makes up the distance to the track. And this flag is actually, as you can see, about 2 millimeters, maybe 3, from the actual surface of the track, and the braid is only 0.3 of a mil, or 0.2 if you get racing braid, about 0.3 of a mil thick. So you've got a little bit of room there for the braid to have a little bit of compensation. And then the wire will literally, I'll cut this wire in half, I'll pull a little bit more out. Well, that one piece will go on that side with a nice healthy loop like that, and then the other one will go onto the other side. And then as this wire comes up through the wheel, as we can see, it'll come through. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe I should do it that way, not sure. It'll come through the bucket right at that point, straight into the bucket for the motor. So that is literally the whole of the stationary front wheel finished, including the insulated flag. So what I now need to do is make 2 wheel faces on the lathe in resin with a little shaft as a bearing, and that will give us our actual rotating outer wheels, and they're the actual parts that are going to actually sit on the track. This part won't sit on the track at all. This piece will hover in mid-air, and it's only literally a very glorified guide. In fact, this is all this is a very, very glorified guide. The actual wheels on either side are the parts that will actually be effectively the front wheels. So this is just a guide. The bits that go on there are actually the wheels that actually run on the track. So let's crack on, let's get these outers made. Here are all the components, and I'll put them together for you so you get an idea of what's going on. So we have the shim first, followed by the outer third, the other shim, and the other third, and then the guide. Nip up the grub screw, and that completes the front wheel assembly. So there's one, flip it over, and there's the other, and as you can see, the whole wheel is sitting on the guide itself. So that's, the guide is free to turn, so when the wheelbarrow goes into a full-on sideways drift, you can. But also you can see on the outer third, so we've got this groove which is ready to take a 1.5mm O-ring for a little bit of traction, so we get a quiet run, and also gives the wheel something to grip to actually run. And then the whole thing will fit up inside the wheelbarrow, just like that. And the wheel will turn, as you can see, once it's all in place. And then, in case you were wondering where the motor is exactly going to go, it'll sit inside the bucket just here, and it'll take a drive band from this pulley down through the bucket onto the back axle, running across here onto a centre pulley, and then obviously the wheels on the outside of that with little drive bands. The wheels are going to be Perspex, and so is the middle pulley, and I've also got food grade O-rings which are clear to go on the outer wheels, so trying to hide the rear drive wheels as much as possible. Also the band from the motor is also going to be clear, so not invisible, but it will just help. So on with the back axle and the motor mount. managed to get the bearings in now, all into place and soldered in nice and parallel to the frame, and all nice and loose. As you can see, it spins freely. So that's that done. Got 2mm silicone drive bands on the outside, and we've got a 1.5mm silicone drive band for the middle, and the little motor mount all set up. It's not quite in the right place yet because the screws aren't on, but that is pretty much where it'll sit right there, and it will run. I don't know if that will pick that up. It does actually run. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it is actually running perfectly well. Everything all lines up, all the holes are in the right place, and that's it. It's done. So disassemble this and on to the painting stage. So what I've got to do now is create 3 flat sides on the end of this axle, and then make some strapping so that I can assemble the wheel and solder it back to the bucket, and then mask it off in this localized area, make good the silver, put a little bit of clear coat over the top. So I've got this very nice empty Team Slot case, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Team Slot because I reached out to them and they were very, very gracious in supplying me with this box, and a lot of manufacturers won't do that, but they did, so thank you very much. Anyway, so what I want to do is I want to fit a nice oval of grass on this base. So there's a little trick that I saw many years ago and I've never used it until now, so I'm going to share it with you because you never know, it might be interesting for somebody and you might be able to utilize it in a project of your own at some point. So the basic premise of this idea is you work out your distance less a bit, in this case a little bit shorter than my base, and then you get a piece of string and you make it slacker. Now I don't know what the formula is for this, so I guess you just have to suck it and see, but you can see that what I've got here, it's about, the loop itself is probably about 10 mil, sort of 3/8 longer than my nail centers, and I'll show you. So I'm going to go into that loop that I've done there and just go around like this, and you can see that I'm actually getting a perfect oval. Quite a neat little trick. So there we are, there's my oval. Now you can see that that oval is as long as the base, more or less, and as wide as the base. So what I'll do now is I'll transfer this shape onto some double-sided tape, and then I'll stick the double-sided tape onto my felt, and then I can remove these little grooves here because I don't need those, and I'll double-sided tape my felt straight to the box. The case is all finished. So there we are, my wheelbarrow build. How many of you saw that coming? I didn't even think of it myself until about a week after I made the joke. So what I'll do is I'll get you on the bench and we can have a close look at what I created. And here she is, the star of the show, my little Gulf wheelbarrow in its nice presentation box. So let's get her out and I'll show you, give her a bit of a closer look. So let's get him off the base. I just put this wire on just because it's convenient. There you go. And there she is, my little Gulf wheelbarrow. So you may be wondering, why have I used carrots? Well, the thing is, carrots are naturally streamlined. And if you look at the direction of travel, they're all pointing in the correct direction for maximum airflow. And they're orange. And they're vaguely comedic. So why not? And underneath our carrot box is the motor. Now the carrot box got a little bit of lead in there just to give it a little bit of traction on the back end. So there we are. All those nice little carrots. And if I get bored with carrots and I want to blow a hat or something like that, I can always make a new one of these. They're not difficult. There's the motor. And the drive band works extremely well. I was a little bit worried about whether it would actually fly off or anything, but it doesn't. It works absolutely great with no issues at all. So there we are. And there's our sprung-loaded guide. And the rubber O-rings for the drive on the front wheel, so that it gives the illusion that it's running on the front wheel. Well, it technically is running on the front wheel, really. But, there we go. Nice little close-up. And the paintwork turned out quite nice as well. I was a bit worried about the paintwork, but this is the Tamiya X22 and Mr. Colour levelling thinner, and it worked pretty well. The last coat was pure thinner, just as flat down the varnish, and that all worked out rather nicely. So the only reason I've used Tamiya colours this time round was because I actually had the paint code to get the orange and the blue correct. So that's why I've actually used Tamiya. But my next build I'll probably use Mr. Colour lacquer paints and see how I get on with those as well. But this worked out really well. And also my dehydrator worked extremely nicely as well. I was very pleased with that and made short work of getting this paint work done, because there was probably about 10 different processes to get this one done, and without the dehydrator I would still be here barely started. So that's a really good investment. I'll definitely be using that again later on. So soldering the front wheel on, to be fair, was a little bit tricky. It would have been nicer to have made it even neater than that, but I'm quite happy with it in the end. It's all worked out pretty well, and it runs well enough as well around the track as well. I never built it to be a speed demon, but it does the job perfectly nicely. It's a bit of a laugh. So there we are. And the magnets, as you can see, work extremely well. They don't let the carrots fly out, and we don't want the carrots going all over the track. So, and there we are, my little wheelbarrow. So there we are. That concludes my Gulf wheelbarrow build. I really enjoyed making this one, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as well. So, if you like this sort of content, maybe you'll subscribe, and if you hit the little bell, that'd be awesome. Until the next one, thank you very much.